Brian, good? Yes.
All right, I'm going to call to order the regular board meeting of the Ballston Spa Central School District Board of Education on November 3rd, 2021. First item on our agenda is recognition. Do we have recognition this evening?
No formal recognition, but in light of the events of the week, our transportation team, they are now chess masters. In sitting with them today and going through the process of how they try to match the limited number of drivers with the enormous level of nuance within our runs, special education out of district, small buses in district, how we can combine buses that have a lower ridership to free up a driver so that we minimize the negative impact on families in terms of them not having a bus available. So to that group, the administrative team in particular, and the drivers themselves, there is very much a put me in coach type of attitude on the transportation team. We couldn't be more grateful for that. And I think he's here somewhere. Our substitute bus driver this afternoon that saved the day for one of our buses is our school resource officer, John Becker. So that was incredibly helpful for us. And again, he showed up at the bus garage at the right time, in our opinion. He may have a different opinion on that. Our substitutes within the classroom, we had a situation this week where a teacher was not available. We have very few substitutes, particularly for our special education classrooms within the district. Mrs. Johnson, our principal, stepped in as sub. Kathleen Skelly, our director of curriculum instruction, she has stepped in for full days. Kaylin Rabideau, one of our instructional coaches, stepped in. Tomorrow we'll have one of our instructional teacher leaders stepping in. Everybody is pitching in to make the coverage necessary, and they're doing it without question or complaint. So again, to these groups in particular, I just can't express how grateful I am for their willingness to help out.
And I'd just like to add to our community here and watching on the stream, you know, the district, the board, the district administration, the board, were incredibly frustrated and certainly not at all pleased about some of the burden we put on our parents and caregivers, the uncertainty. You know, it's absolutely not the way that anyone would want to go about the business of the district. All you have to do is see any of the media sources to know that this is a issue across the state, across our area, across the country, and you know, really doing the best we can to try and get as many of our students in-person instruction, to make any of the burden on parents and caregivers as fair and equitable as we can, and really, you know, express your frustration. We would love to hear from you, but everyone is really doing the best they can in a very difficult situation here. We are at the time for our first public comment. We do have 2 speakers signed up for public comment. As I do every meeting, I will read our statement and our guidance on public comment. The Board of Education welcomes district residents, parents, and other interested persons to its meeting. Community involvement at board meetings is encouraged so that the board can better understand and represent the view of its constituents. Please be aware, however, that information such as individual student information or particular personnel issues cannot be discussed at public sessions of the board. Speakers will be called upon individually. When recognized by the board president, will be asked to approach the podium and state your name and residence. We ask that all comments are directed to the board as a complete body and not to any individual board members or individual administration members. Statements are restricted to a maximum of 2 minutes. And speakers will be notified when the board president, when his or her time has expired. And as always, I will absolutely have some leeway with that. I'm not going to cut anybody off. I will try and sort of give you a little signal that if you can try and wrap it up, please wrap it up. But we're here to hear what you have to say. Please be respectful of everybody's time, just as we're being respectful of yours. The board and the district staff take public comment very seriously. However, the board will not respond to comments or questions during the public comment period. We've asked that you provide an email for a response from the board, and we will follow up and provide a response. The board asks the public's cooperation in maintaining a safe and respectful environment, and the board president reserves the right to limit individual comments if it is deemed necessary. To achieve this, speakers will not please make slanderous attacks on any group, organization, or individual, member of the board, employee of the district, member of the audience, or a member of the public. Will please refrain from using profane language, vulgar language, disparaging language, or racial or ethnic slurs, or disrupt the meeting with loud outbursts or other disruptive conduct or behavior, either during the speaker's assigned time or at any other time during the meeting. Speakers understand that a failure to comply with these rules for maintaining a respectful and productive environment may result in early termination of the speaker's allotted time, a denial of future requests to speak, any other actions deemed necessary by the president of the board where appropriate for health and safety measures, the superintendent of schools. With that, our first person signed up for public comment is Shannon Rashute.
Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I just have a few concerns with our children's education, stating I'd like to know why our desks in the middle school are only arm's length away when the CDC guidelines now require 3 feet. Also, the classrooms are a larger size like they were before pre-COVID. If the disease is so horrible and so deadly, then our kids should not be so close to one another in classrooms. And if our students were 6 feet or 3 feet away from one another, that they wouldn't have to wear the masks and they could have them removed because they were a safe distance away from everybody. On the bus, students are 2 to 3 to a seat. There's no spaces, there's no gaps, there's nothing. Again, I guess COVID can't be spread on a bus. That's good to know. I'm not sure what or how many children each of you have. Just curious if you would make your children wear a mask, suffocating with their anxiety throughout the day, and have wet masks and not care. You guys are supposed to be here protecting our children, and you're not. I mean, every time I come here, I have to remind myself not to make this comment, but you guys fail us. Every single day our children walk into the school. Every day when I drop my son off at school, I see teachers congregating outside without masks, and I understand outside they don't need to wear the masks. However, I see children that are very close to certain teachers, which is great to see. But again, COVID can be spread that way. It has been brought to my attention for 3 weeks now that children are being ushered and pushed and dragged around the school with dog leashes. It has been brought up to many teachers, and no one seems to be doing anything because they are afraid of retaliation from the higher-ups. Our children are in your hands again every single day, and the leashes and being dragged around is a safety issue. Lastly, I would like to know if our children decide to exercise their right and not get the vaccine that we know is coming, especially from this school board, what you guys will do for our children's education when they decide they will opt out of it. I know me, I'm opting out of it. My son will not have a vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next up is Chris Dubuque.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. You've seen me many times now, and I will probably be at many more board meetings, but each time I've introduced myself, where I reside, I haven't really introduced the organization that I represent. I'm the leader of the Saratoga County chapter of New York Informed. New York Informed itself is an organization consisting of 20 counties in New York State, 1,500 members. Our chapter in Saratoga County alone is 200 members and growing. part of what we're here to do is obviously not butt heads with the board, but to try to work with you, give you the tools, help you with serving the best interests of all our kids, all your faculty, all your staff, your teachers. We are a very diverse group. We have teachers amongst our organization, we have pediatricians, we have doctors, we have members of the state, including the Department of Education. Again, we're just here to try to work with everybody and promote what's considered probably best practices. I know it was recommended of maybe putting together a board and parent committee. I think that would be in the best interest to do something along those lines. I was at a board meeting last night. That's one of the things we do. We go to various board meetings. We like to see how they're structured. What are the topics? What are the issues? What are some of the concerns of other communities out there? This particular board meeting took us all back a little bit in a positive way. It was actually in Stillwater, and they sort of broke with protocol. They actually addressed the community. A lot of courage it took on that superintendent's part. I could have seen probably 3 or 4 ways that could have gone wrong. There were a lot of passionate parents and teachers amongst the group that had a lot of concerns, and they wanted to bring them to the attention of the board. The superintendent handled it very well. She did say some questions couldn't be immediately answered there that night, and that they would require further research and an email correspondence. But most of the issues were addressed as the parents brought them up in public comment. There's a good dialogue that happened. I think that's more productive than sometimes getting up here, having the comment, waiting 48 hours to get a response, responding to that response, coming up and trying to bring it up again at the next board meeting. I do understand there are some risks to that as well, with some heated debate at times, but I have to say everybody handled themselves pretty cordially, and it was, you could call it maybe a pilot program. I'd like to see that continue, at least in that board meeting and in that school, and maybe it'd be nice to see something happen here, even if it's just to start off small with a board parent committee. I'm always reminded of the slogan you have out there on the wall. You know, it's pretty easy to be amongst a group, but it takes courage to stand alone. Again, I like to recognize when I see positive steps in that direction, and I have to give credit to that superintendent and to that board for taking on that challenge last night. I think it was very productive. It didn't stretch the meeting out any longer than it probably would have been otherwise. And again, I feel a lot of parents and teachers, they didn't get all their questions answered, but they really felt like the board was listening to them and was on the same page with them as well. So again, that'd probably be my only question, is what are some steps that we could take here in this district, especially with maybe the committee, the board parent committee, and what would be the timeline for getting something like that set up? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dubuque. Next up on our agenda is our student government report. And we do have our representative. Good evening.
Hi, Emily.
Good evening. First off, I want to apologize for not being here 2 weeks ago. I had a health issue, so I had to take care of that. So I'll just go over the 4 weeks, give a report. So student government wrapped up our second holiday spirit week. Second spirit week. It was very successful. Everyone had a great time, and everyone enjoyed the football game, and I thought we put a lot of work into it, and I'm glad it went well. We made a lot of money, which we're going to use to help people in our community during the holidays. We are running Thanksgiving food drive right now up till November 17th in the high school, and we are going to bring all that food we collect to the First Presbyterian Church, and they have a list of people in our community who don't have food for Thanksgiving. They make them baskets, and we're all going to volunteer to help give them out, walk it to their car, stuff like that, just be a good human being. And then on December 9th, we are running holiday trivia as we do every year. It'll probably be in the library. We're excited to have it in person this year. And we are also running a toy drive here at the high school through the whole month of December. It's a used toy drive, and we are donating all of the toys to people in the community who they basically can come shop for what they want, and they can get as many as they want for kids who don't get presents at Christmas within our Ballston Spa community. So that is what I have for now.
Where can people who aren't high schoolers donate for the food drive and the used toys? I got a lot of used toys.
So we have collection dates for the toy drive are December 2nd and December 3rd. So I'll actually have the flyer printed for our next meeting because we still have more time, but there's an email that you send it to, and you send your address, and we'll go and pick up all the toys and bring them, and then we organize all them, and on the 5th and 6th is the actual days of the drive where people can come in and get toys. So for Thanksgiving, if you have stuff like that, I'm sure we could pick it up. If you can't get it to the high school, that's fine.
Thank you.
That's great, Emily, and make sure all that gets out on your Twitter feed and for the various classes as well, and people will pick it up there. And just also let us know about the signups for the trivia contest. In the past, the board has had a team with varying degrees of success or lack of success in that trivia competition. And we'd certainly love to support the high school and be part of it again this year.
Yeah, that sounds good. We're doing a Google form sign up. I'll get that up tomorrow and get it out. So.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's it. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Emily.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Next up is the approval of minutes for the October 6th, 2021 regular meeting and the October 20th, 2021 regular meeting. May I have a motion to approve the approval of the minutes for both of those meetings?
So moved.
Any amendments or requests for change? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Meeting minutes for the October 6th regular meeting, October 20th regular meeting are approved. And next up, we have our superintendent's report. Superintendent Slentz.
Thank you, sir. Two items for tonight. The first one, special education program update. While our team is getting the slide deck posted, a little bit of background because we've had quite a bit of change on the board over the last 4 years. 3 years in particular, because it was 3 years ago where we brought in an outside expert on special education to do a program overview. What were our strengths? What were some of the areas that we needed to focus on to improve? What were some things that we didn't have in place that it was critical for us to establish so that we could offer an appropriate program for all of our students with disabilities? Part of what comes with special education is a good deal of confusion. There are a tremendous amount of laws and regulations that have to be followed. There is a tremendous amount of paperwork that has to go on. The individual educational plan, for example, that is a legal document that must be adhered to. And so there's a lot of confusion, especially when you think about, in our context, over those 3 years, we've changed administrative staff, we've changed administrative models, we have changed staffing, we have changed our curricular programs. So as we're looking at the program and making the improvements, a lot of the pieces that are within that program are themselves changing. So Mrs. Lashway, our director, and she will introduce the other members of the team, will take you through a little bit of background on special ed, leading us then up to what is the state of special ed in the district right now. Mrs. Lashway.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for letting us speak today about special education. I'm Nancy Lashway. I'm the Director of Special Education in the district. I'm joined by Julie Umar, who is our Assistant Director of Special Education, and Janlea Duca, who is our Interim Special Education Supervisor at the middle high school level, in addition to being the high school principal. Chris Jensen rounds out our administrative team. She's also an interim supervisor and helps in many, many areas. I'm thrilled to be here today to talk about special education. I love to work in special education, I love to learn about special education, and I love to talk about special education. Superintendent Slentz concerned me just a little the other day. I rarely have questions about any directives I get from him, and he did not give me a timeline for how long my presentation could be. And I thought, ooh, this is the first time I might question him. The next day I came into school, he had guidelines for me, so he knows me well. So the first thing I want to talk about is what is special education. There are a great deal of misconceptions about what special education is. Anybody that needs any support needs special education. Anybody who needs any equipment needs special education. Not true. So we're going to talk about, there are two components of what are special education, and I'm going to take a few minutes to go through all of them. The first are the general education components, because that is part of special education. It is the general education instruction, supports, and services that are provided to students. The thing that makes special education a unique service is specially designed instruction. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more after I get through the general education piece. So what is general education that makes it part of special education? First of all students are required to participate in the Part 100 regulations. That is for all students, special ed or gen ed. New York State Learning Standards. All students are required to participate in the New York State Learning Standards at their ability level. The Ballston SPA adopted curriculums, K through 12. All students participate in the curriculums. And where we start to see the help for students who might be learning a little bit differently or struggling in areas is through the adopted curriculums. Our curriculums include intensive learning systems. They include supports that students may be able to participate in. All teachers differentiate instruction. They provide different modes of learning, visuals, auditory, extra support. The next thing is the multi-tiered systems of support. We call it MTSS. This is a work in process at Ballston SPA that I am so incredibly proud of, that we have worked primarily on the academic piece to this point, and it is tiered support to give students extra help when they struggle or have a weakness area. And then finally, we are Section 504. I will talk about that a little bit, but Section 504 is also a general education support that helps students. So back to MTSS, because that is one of the critical pieces that of general education supports. MTSS is a framework of response to students who are struggling in a targeted area. Through benchmark assessments and other assessments we give to all students, we can start to identify very specific areas where students are struggling academically, and to some degree where they're maybe struggling behaviorally. We address those academic and behavioral needs, and we utilize a lot of people who have special knowledge in the areas of reading, writing, math, as well as behavior support, to give the students that support. That support starts out in the classroom at Tier 1, and students are supported through differentiation, through providing more visuals, through providing additional reminders to the whole group. At Tier 2 and Tier 3, we start talking about the fact that they might need to learn in that targeted area in a smaller group. They might need a little more practice with it. And then at Tier 3, we actually start to think about the least restrictive environment. The least restrictive environment is we want students to be learning as much as possible in the general education setting, but this is where we start to say, does the student need to be pulled out a little bit of time to target that area one-on-one or in small group, so then we can get them right back in the general education setting. It is all driven by data, and at Ballston SPA, our model is Tier 1 through Tier 4. So what if all that support isn't enough? What if we have identified that a student has needs? The student participates in the tiered support all the way up through tier 3, and it still is not enough. That is when our student progress review team comes in. The team is comprised of the building principal as well as a special education supervisor. They look at all the data of all the interventions that have been provided to that student. And they say to themselves, is this a student that we need to think about to determine if they are suspected of having a disability? Now, I'm going to be talking about disability, and typically when we think of disability, we automatically think about special ed. We're not there yet. We can think about them having a disability through Section 504 or the Committee of Special Education. What the principal and the supervisor look at is how long has the student had the intervention? What progress have they made with the interventions? Are there any other factors we have to think about? Did the student have a significant absence for some reason? Did the student have something going on in their life that kept them from being able to learn properly from those interventions? If everything went as intended, then they start to talk about, does the student need Section 504 or the Committee on Special Education? Section 504 is part of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and it comes from the Americans with Disability Act that guarantees people with disabilities have complete access to what others do in the workplace, and through Section 504, we make sure that they have access to everything within the school. It protects students with physical or mental impairments so that they can participate in the same fashion as others. One of the key words we use with Section 504 is substantially. That it has to substantially limit one of the major life activities. So a student may have a learning difficulty, and it substantially limits them. That means it's more than typical students. It's more than those students who are in our MTSS, but it is not as much as special education yet. We call that substantial. No, I'm sorry, we call that, that's the special ed. So for substantially limiting one of their activities, what we typically look at is, do they need accommodations? Might they need a little extra time? Might they need a different tool to help them, like a graphic organizer? Do they need use of an elevator? What way are they substantially limited? And we typically provide accommodations, we provide some modifications, and we provide them with a level of support. So what if that isn't enough? What if when the committee meets, they talk about the fact, no, it's just not enough. This student has skills that they need to build. That is when we start to look if the student is suspected of having a disability that requires specially designed instruction. And that is the second element that makes it special education. That they don't need just accommodations, they don't need just modifications, they don't need just extra support, they also need specially designed instruction to build a new skill. And if that is the case, then they will put in a referral to the special education department. So let me talk a little bit more about what is this specially designed instruction. It is adaptations to the content the student is learning, the methodology in which they learn, or the delivery of their instruction. This is determined by looking at what their specific needs are. This is done through evaluation, observation, teacher and specialist input, and we address their unique needs from the disability that now is identified through the special education department. What specially designed instruction must be is it must be very intentional, it must be based on the individual needs of the student, and there must be purposeful planning and execution of the instruction related to the needs of that student. What this does, it ensures FAPE, free and appropriate education, in the least restrictive environment in which they can learn. Because specially designed instruction does not necessarily mean that they need to leave the general education setting, but we are looking at what is that level of instruction they need to do this. We are looking for them to be able to access, participate, and progress in the general education curriculum throughout an entire lesson. That is what the goal of specially designed instruction is. The way that that is determined is by looking at the level of need they have and developing skills that need to be developed, developing goals to build those new skills, and then developing services and supports through an IEP, an individual education program for those students. So that is kind of the journey that all of our students take. And it's very, very important that we allow students to get the support and services of the general education setting as much as we can. And I will say at Ballston Spa, we have excellent tiered support. And we want them to be able to benefit from those services as much as they can before having to be considered for special education. So for students with disability, and again, when I'm talking about students with disability, I'm talking gen ed and special ed. 504 are general education students who just need those accommodations in order to access their education. The primary areas of major life limitation that we see in Ballston Spa is learning, that students are having difficulty learning. A lot of times it's difficulty learning because of ability to attend, ability to focus. It also could be that there are social emotional reasons, that students have anxiety, they're struggling with things like that. And then medical need is also one of the highest areas in Ballston Spa, that students might have medical needs that require them to have those special accommodations, sometimes just for testing, but also sometimes for their program. In Ballston Spa, we have eligible, the number of students who are eligible is 161 at this time. That is pretty consistent across other years that we have about that many. Currently, we have 4 students who are pending 504s. The next area that I wanted to talk about was actually preschool students. While preschool students are not served here in the Ballston Spa buildings, we actually do have oversight over the Committee on Preschool Special Education. And so we help them with finding students who are in preschool who may need services. We work to make sure that they are supported through the initial eligibility process where they're evaluated. This is very scary for parents of young children, so very often we're talking to them. It is not uncommon to go make home visits and talk to them and help and support them. We also run all of their meetings, talk about the evaluations, and support them through the time that they start in kindergarten. Currently in Ballston Spa, we have 63 students who are identified as preschoolers with disability. That is kind of low for us. I think that this is common in many of the surrounding districts, and it's directly related to the pandemic, that for many, many students, it did not make sense to send these students to remote instruction. These are students who are 2 and 3 and 4 years old. So for them to participate in programs remotely just did not make sense. Some parents identified that they felt their child needed help, but they did not want to take them out in public to get evaluated. They did not want them going back in public once services started in person. So we are seeing a large number of referrals at this point. Currently, after only 2 months here in school, we've got 23 students who are currently referred and pending evaluation. So I do expect that number will go up throughout the year. And then finally, we have the Committee on Special Education. That is school-age children, 8 through age 21 if needed. And currently, we have 699 students who are eligible for special education. It is hard to get a consistent number. One of the things I'm doing is I'm going to do a poll every year now on November 1st. That is kind of one of our leveling off points. All the students that leave throughout the summer have gone, people who are coming in have come in, and that's one of our areas where we get pretty consistent numbers. But on any day, like tomorrow we have meetings, that number will probably change tomorrow. But it's good for us to try to get it once a year so that we can establish the consistency. This is about, the best poll I could get was from 1920, and this is about consistent, maybe a little bit less than it was at that point. The breakup of that is that we have currently 204 students at the high school who are eligible. At the middle school, we have 164 students. At the elementary level, we have 294 students. With the majority of those students, about 1/3 of those students are actually at Wood Road. That is our highest elementary building. We also have 20 students who are at BOCES. We work with 4 BOCES. These are out-of-district placements, we call them, that the students need specially designed instruction in a small class at a placement outside the school. We work with our BOCES, Wishwe BOCES. We also work with Hamilton, Fulton, Montgomery BOCES, Questar BOCES, and Capital Region BOCES to place students. And then we have 17 other students. That can include, we also have a continuum of placement, and that can be that the students get their services in many places. They can get it through a BOCES placement. They can get it in private schools. They can get it in home or hospital if that is what is needed. They can also get it in residential schools if that is the level of specially designed instruction that these students need. So we have about 17 students that are in that other area. There are 13 classification areas for disability. We currently utilize about 9 of those classification areas. The top 4 classification areas we have for students with disability is other health impaired. That means that students, we can't identify that one disability area, that the students may have significant attentional difficulties. They have difficulty focusing. It may be that the students have health issues that impact their ability to have stamina to sit throughout the day, to work throughout the day. So this is one area that we see a lot of children going into. It may be students that have those social emotional challenges that impact their ability to learn, and then in addition to that, they might also have a learning disability. So that is the area where students go if they have those type of issues. Specific learning disability is our second most common area. That can be a learning disability in many areas. It can be reading, writing, math. Those are some of the common areas we have. Speech and language impairment is the third most common area we have, that their ability to either articulate what they say or to use language is significantly impacting their ability to learn, their ability to read, write, communicate. And then the fourth area of our 13 areas is autism, that we have quite a few students who have autism. And No one student with autism fits into any program or any classification. Just like every other disability area, we have some students who are really of above average potential, all the way through to students who are in our most restrictive settings, who are on the autism spectrum. Okay, the last thing I'm going to talk to you about is our Continuum of Services. This is the services that are mandated by New York State that we have these services. The first service that we are required to have for students is consultant teacher. That is where a teacher goes into the classroom and works with a general education teacher to support the students and to provide them with small group work, large group work, and specially designed instruction for them. It can be both direct, which means they are going directly into the classroom to work with the students, or it can be indirect, which means that the two teachers, the general education teacher and the special education teacher, work together to talk about what needs to be done with a lesson, what visuals need to be provided. How can that student get the specially designed instruction through their lesson? The second area is resource room. Resource room is a small ratio group. It's maximum of 5 students with 1 special education teacher. That is where students receive supplemental instruction. It may mean that they don't need, in the actual content, they might need some instruction in organizing themselves in order to be able to write, to do a project. Resource room is a lot of reteaching, pre-teaching, so that students can participate once they get into the classroom. That is also on our continuum. Related services, we provide speech and language, we provide occupational therapy, physical therapy, vision services, hearing services, skilled nursing services. That isn't even all of them. There's a wide range of related services that you look at areas outside the academics that is impacting their abilities to be successful in school. Integrated co-teaching is the one area that is not a required service on the continuum, but we do have it here at Ballston Spa, and it is recommended that you have it whenever possible. That is where a general education teacher and special education teacher are working together in a classroom to make sure that the students are getting both the curriculum and the specially designed instruction that is needed at that time. And the final requirement on the spectrum is special class. Special class is for students who have significant needs where they are not going to be able to participate, access or participate the general education instruction without intense specially designed instruction. And so we have many different ratios, both for students who have academic needs as well as those who have social emotional behavior needs that keep them from being successful with their academics. It can be a ratio from as high as 15:1, and that is for students who have they still have significant learning needs, but they can participate in the general education curriculum for the most part. There's also 12-1-1. Our 12-1-1s I do want to just quickly mention because some of our 12-1-1s are for students who are what we call New York State alternative assessed. That means that the significance of their cognitive challenges as well as their communication and their adaptive living skills, their ability to have life skills, that is so impacted that they really need a full day of specially designed instruction where the New York standards have been adjusted to the level that they can work. They do not participate completely in the full curriculum. They have curriculums where the standards have been broken down to meet their needs. Okay. And now Julie's going to tell you about the other services that are provided through special education.
Good evening, guys. So the first thing is we offer transition services. And this is a service that is temporary, and it really just helps students through transition. And transitional services is when a student turns 15 years old, we start looking at what activities and services they need to help prepare them for secondary success. We also offer a variety of trainings, and this can come in the form of professional development for parents. It could come in the form of professional development for staff. It's really to help provide additional support and training to best meet the needs of the student. Then we have adapted physical education. So that is physical education that is adapted to fit the needs of the students. We have 12-month service, special services. So this can come in a full day summer program where the students qualify to get services over the summer in the classroom. We can also provide related services if they qualify over the summer. And then the summer program is our extended school year. And then we also have special transportation. And some students, they might need a small bus, they might need buses with equipment, they might need a bus with an attendant. So those are some of the services that we offer in that area. So our continuum at the elementary schools is the next thing I want to talk about. So we have 4 elementary schools, and we have related services where the professionals in certain areas that Nancy mentioned, speech, OT, PT, they can either push in or they can pull a student out, and they can provide the related service. We have the integrated co-teach model in all of our buildings, which Ms. Lashway mentioned, has the general education provider and the special education teacher together in the classroom. We also have a resource room, which is the 5-to-1 ratio, working on the pre-teaching and the reteaching skills. We have the special class, 15-1. We have 4 15-1-1 classrooms at Malta Avenue, so that is 15 students, 1 teacher or 1 special education teacher, and 1 teaching assistant. And those classrooms are more focused on the cognitive, intensive cognitive academic support. Then we have the 12-1-1s. We have 3 of them at Wood Road, and those classrooms really focus on social or adaptive skills, the cognitive, and what's the word I'm missing? Communication, thank you. Communication skills. Then we have our 6-1-2s and our 8-1-2s at Milton Terrace. And so those classrooms are really focused on the social emotional learning, and it's not as academic based. And then we have a 12-1 with a 3-to-1 ratio classroom at Gordon Creek. It's called the Move Room, and that stands for Mobility Opportunities via Education. So that really focuses on moving and being able to access your education. Those students might have more physical and cognitive disabilities, and they access their education through this really awesome program called Move. In terms of next year, some of the things that we are proposing and looking at is using the consultant teacher model as a replacement to the integrated co-teaching model. This would allow us some more flexibility with our scheduling, which in turn would give our students some times where they might actually receive more services. And a lot of the skills that our teachers use in the co-taught model can still be met through the direct consultant teacher model. We are also looking at going from 4 classrooms to 5 at Malta Ave, and the same thing for Milton Terrace. And that would really help our teachers be able to not teach so many grade levels. because sometimes we could have up to 3 grade levels in one classroom. So if we expand that, then they can focus in on 1 or 2 grade levels.
Good evening, thank you. I wanted to start off by thanking the board. I'm coming up on 2 full years of serving in this dual capacity as both as the high school principal and the special education supervisor for grades 6 through 12. It's been a fantastic experience for me. I've learned a tremendous amount, and it's really helped when I have conversations with parents who have concerns and students on the special education side of things. It's helped me, meet with these parents and really talk to them, because I'm in a unique situation where I can kind of see the end game, the goal with graduation and beyond. And so I'm able to speak to the special education side of things, but also talk about different supports that we can offer both at middle school and high school to really put our kids in the best possible position for success once they leave us. So as far as our continuum of services goes for middle school, we have a lot of the same. We have the related service, the integrated co-teach, ICT, resource room. We have special class literacy, which is a literacy class, grades 6, 7, and 8, with 12 students in each class. And then we have our 12-1 alt-assessed gateway program, and we have 2 812 self-contains. So part of, part of my nature is I'm always looking at gaps and trying to find areas of improvement. So a couple of years ago, we added ICT social studies at grade 6 to kind of fill in the gaps of that continuum. This year, we have ICT social studies for grades 6 and 7, and then next year, the final piece of that phase-in will be the integrated co-teach for grades 6, 7, and 8. So we will have ICT in the 4 cores next year: math, English, science, and social studies. Taking a look at where we're at this year as far as the 15-1 special class programming. So we currently offer the 15-1 classes in English and math. Proposed additions to the continuum for next year. And what we've seen is, we have students who are in the 812, who we try to push out into a 15-1. But the gap there is we have English and math. And so their schedule potentially looks English and math for 15 and 1, and then ICT for social studies and science. So there's a gap there because, we want that transitional stage where they can go from self-contained 8-1 to a 15-1, then to an ICT. And so sometimes the kids don't see a lot of success in an ICT when they're also in 15-1. So one of the proposed changes we'd like to make, additions, would be for next year to add the 15-1 special class in both social studies and science for grades 6 and 7, and then phase in grade 8 the following year. So then we'd have a true continuum of services, both 812 self-contained, 15-1 across the 4 cores, and then the ICT, the co-tots, across the core 4s at the middle school level. And so, when we're talking about where a student starts, where they enter middle school, and when they enter high school, those are 2 transitional points that are really key, where we got to kind of look at their programming and make sure that we're building them up. And then when they get to high school, we put those supports in, but then there comes a point where we start to take the supports off, because we want to make sure that they're advocating for themselves, setting themselves up for success as they leave us. So it's almost a kind of build up, get the students to have confidence, to advocate for themselves, to build those skills through years, and then we start to pull some of those scaffolds off so that once they leave high school, they can be successful in whatever area they go into. So at the high school, again, very similar to the middle school, related service, ICT, resource, special class literacy, same thing as the middle school. We have 2 12-1, we call them the Bridges program, which are the alt-assessed, and then we have a 15-1 alt-assessed. We do have an 8-1, previously an 8-1, we expanded that to a 12-1 just to kind of give us that flexibility, because what we like to do at the high school is, kids come into a self-contained 8-1, we want to try to push them out as much as possible to get them into a 15-1, to get them into an ICT, to get them ready to pass those Regents exams. So by making that a 12-1, it gives us a little bit of flexibility. I should mention that, when we build the schedule, the ICT classes, we try to keep to about 24 with 10 special education students, Gives us a little bit of flexibility. We can go up to 12, but we like to cap it at 10 early when we're building the schedule, because we do like to have a couple student leeway if we have to make schedule changes or we get transfers in late over the summer. So that's kind of what our continuum looks like at the high school. So last year, we didn't really have any offerings for our seniors, except for resource room. And so we added the ICT English, co-taught English 12. So English 12 we added 2 years ago as kind of a capstone English course. We used to just have electives. So we went to a full year English 12. We still offer the electives for students who are really into, fantasy and myth or public speaking, things like that. But then, we have a full year English 12. We added the ICT this year. And that allows us to provide a service for our seniors, but also take them out of the resource room. So try to remove that scaffold so they can start to, advocate for themselves, build those skills. So, but we still want to have a support for them as seniors. The proposed addition of the continuum for next year. So as it stands right now, when we're talking about Regents level courses, we have an ICT intro, we have an ICT algebra. Graduation requirement is you need 3 years of math. So we're proposing an ICT geometry, which would suffice the 3rd math credit for graduation, but it also gives our kids a really strong opportunity to get an advanced Regents diploma with that geometry exam. So we think by adding the ICT geometry, it's kind of twofold. That's that 3rd credit of math for our special education students, where sometimes, they get intro, they get algebra, and then we see them struggle sometimes with either topics, a geometry, an applied geometry. But if we have that ICT support, that'll be their 3rd credit of math, and we think that'll give them an opportunity to take that Geometry Regents exam. And not so much to boost the advanced numbers, but really to give them the confidence that, they took a challenging exam and they passed it. And we hope to see that with that confidence, they take on some more challenging courses their junior and senior year as they prepare to leave us upon graduation. So I will kick it back over to Ms. Lashway.
So we also wanted to talk to you a little bit about our current challenges. We have an incredible department. We have incredible staff. We are constantly looking to improve, and therefore we have to look at what our challenges are. The past 2 years have brought about some unique challenges to us. The pandemic has impacted every facet of the school, including the special education department. Staffing remains a challenge for us. Getting people who are qualified special education teachers. I wish I could say that it is only the special education teachers that are needed. We need teaching assistants. We need teaching aides. We need people who are consistently working with the students, who understand what the students are doing. We need transportation desperately. That is one of the services that we offer. And we all have staffing needs, and that includes special education. So that remains a concern. Not only is it a concern in our district, but it's a concern in all other districts, and that includes the districts that support us by providing services to our students. We're finding that some of the BOCES programs, residential programs, and private programs are telling us we cannot provide services right now because we do have staffing challenges, which makes it a little bit more difficult for us also. There is an increase in behavior communication, and in schools we talk about this when students have behaviors, whether that is shutting down, whether it is acting out, that very often what they are doing is they're communicating to us that the world is not right and they don't know how to use their words to do it. And that is not just for the students who have significant communication needs. Very often people find it that if they act out, if we see behaviors, it is a way for them to somehow feel they've got control over the world. This world has not been felt very in control the past few years, and we have seen an increase in behavior challenges across the board with students, but especially for those who are our special education. We anticipated this, have some resources that we're working with that I'm going to talk about in a minute, but that is one of our challenges. The idea of learning loss versus learning gap, that for students with special education, we're looking at that gap, that the student does not have a skill, and even though they have been taught the skill by general education means, they still have a gap. And then we provide that specially designed instruction to help them to bridge that gap. For the students who were in remote learning, students who had challenges with attendance during the remote learning, as well as those that were here, we found that there is a learning loss. Everybody in the United States is talking about the learning loss that some students have. And while the district has made many efforts to address that learning loss, the Summer Success Program, the work we've done with the curriculum, it is still something that in special education we're constantly gauging. Is this a learning gap or is this a learning loss? And if it's a learning loss, how do we address it? If it's a learning gap, we know how to address it. And then also parental referrals. Parents certainly have the ability to talk to ask that their student be evaluated because they have a challenge that they feel that needs to be addressed. We try to talk to them about whether that challenge is being seen in school and how we can address it in school before it gets considered for special education. But for the first time, many parents through remote learning saw just how challenging the day is for students, that when they don't have that structure of a classroom and a teacher and a seat, that they are having difficulty learning. Also, they're seeing the anxiety that children have experienced over this period of time, and so we do have a significant increase in the number of referrals. Well, because of our MTSS, multi-tiered system of support system, the number of school referrals has gone down significantly. The number of parent referrals has gone up significantly this year. So we are seeing that parents are just so concerned about this that we do have that addition. And then Julie is going to talk to us about the challenge we have with services at the elementary level.
As I mentioned before, each of the elementary schools house a different program. So Milton Terrace has our 812s and our 612s, and Gordon Creek has our MOVE program, and Wood Road has our 1211s, and Malta Ave has our 1511s. So if a student has to go from one program to the other, they have to then move buildings. So that is one of the challenges that we do face.
These are some of the current initiatives that we have underway. That one of the things we were looking at is how can we get more peer support. We have started utilizing instructional teacher leader in special education. It's the first time in many years that we used it. We decided to try it at the elementary level. It is going very well. We are really pleased with how that is going. Utilization of the academic coaches, that the academic coaches are not just there for general education. They are supporting our special education programs, the intensive learning systems that they have to utilize in order to access the general education curriculum. We just we have 2 behavior coaches who are here just to look at that, the tiered support and the special education support for students who need academic help, but it is because their behaviors are keeping them from being able to achieve. We have a additional school psychologist who is going to be actually starting next week. We had a high number of initial referrals that came in. We have a backlog of reevaluations from parents who did not want their children to come in and be reevaluated in person. So we have an additional school psychologist to help us out with that. We have speech and language improvement that is going to be starting very soon. That is that students do not have to be identified through special education in order to get that extra support in speech and language that will help them with their articulation or their language. The teacher is going to be pushing into the kindergarten classrooms and providing that support to students. We are working on continuum work. We are all working on it. We have a presentation we're going to be giving to Ken as soon as we get the PowerPoint finished, but continuing to work on the curriculum, grow the curriculum, identify where we can get the maximum support in specially designed instruction for students through the services that we have in place. And then our intensive learning tools, that is work that has been done through Kathleen Skelly and the curriculum folks, that they have identified some evidence-based intensive learning tools that are phenomenal to help our most significantly impaired students with academics so that they can continue to learn at their grade level while scaffolding at lower levels so that they can accomplish what they need to do at the grade level. And those are having a huge impact. The final thing I wanted to say is who supports special education. And it really comes down to what our motto is. It's everybody. It is absolutely everybody, and I hope that that is a takeaway that you take from this, that it is not just the special education teachers. Couldn't do it without them. It's also the clerical staff. It is also the bus drivers. It is also the administration. It is the maintenance people. It is the general education. It is cafeteria staff. It is other students. Everybody in our school supports special education, and I am so incredibly appreciative of it. And I'm going to actually take that back and not just say our school. We also have great support and help from our parents as well as our community. Questions?
I don't have a, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Just a real quick question. The 504, does that end at graduation, or does that continue on if a student was to go to college? Or?
If a student still qualifies, and actually a great question, that whether a student has an IEP or a Section 504 accommodation plan, if they're going on to college and need additional support, it turns into a Section 504 accommodation plan, which then the college determines if it is appropriate for the student. But we develop it into an accommodation plan if they qualify, and then the individual college will make the determination.
Okay, thank you.
Katie?
I just wanted to say thank you. I think special ed is a super important part of our district, and it's great for the community to hear everything that you just presented. I know I'm excited for this speech, push into kindergarten coming in the near future, and I wrote down intentional learning, and I'm taking that home with me tonight, and I really appreciate everything you guys did. It was a great presentation.
Thank you. And I would like to say, back to the Board of Education, much of this would not be possible without the support of the Board of Education. And all of our initiatives that I talked about, none of those would be possible without the Board of Education's understanding of the importance of this for our students. So thank you.
And I'm sorry, I have one more thing. The discussion about transition services came up a couple of times. One was between the middle school and the high school. I think the other reference was particularly towards transition post-high school. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. And so we can have our students through age 21. Do we generally have students that are in our high school stay with us through age 21? Can you characterize whether they do stay, they sometimes go out? What does that look like?
Transition actually starts at 15, and it is for all students who have an accommodation plan through Section 504 or special education. And what we're doing is learning to provide, we're providing that specially designed instruction and the supports that students need as they develop into those years where they start to think about careers, they start to think about what their interests are, what their likes are, and does that turn into a job that they enjoy and want to stay and grow in. It includes a variety of things, and all students get it. For students who graduate at 18, it stops at 18. the main students that we have that stay through 21 are those who are New York State alternative assessed, those that have the most significant cognitive, communication, and adaptive skills. These are students who are going to need eyes-on, hands-on support probably for the rest of their lives. Most of those students do stay until they're 21 years old. And we have a program that is for the students who are 18 to 21 years old, where they start to learn, they continue to work on functional academics, but they're also learning about the world of work and the things that they like about the world of work and how they can participate and have a better quality of life. For those students, we actually kind of try to encourage them to stay until they're 21 because adult services do not start for those students until they're 21 years old. If they leave school when they're 19 years old, they will not get adult services until they're 21. So we do encourage students to stay till they're 21. Occasionally we have a student that leaves.
Thank you very much for that additional information. And I know that in the coming years, it's maybe more for Superintendent Slentz, we're going to work on assessing our success post-graduation. You know, how do our students do with finishing either a four-year institution or if it's a separate sort of work environment or whatever it is they choose to go to, do we have a measure that they were ready for that and they're successful at that? And potentially if we can carve out a piece of that looks at our special ed graduates, I think that would be useful and could potentially help demonstrate the success of the program.
And to that point, thank you for that, Jason. To that point, you know, we're very fortunate. In Nancy's former life, she was actually a transition specialist. So I applaud you for being so concise with that. Nancy can talk about transition all day long, and it's incredibly substantive and fascinating. But this is where her expertise will really come into play, is when we get into that larger post-secondary project.
Okay, great.
And there is a state performance plan that schools have to do every 6 years. It's called Indicator 14, and that actually looks at post-secondary success. That we provide the state with the names, addresses, and phone numbers of our seniors, and the year after they graduate, they make follow-up calls to find out if they have met their post-secondary plans. It's challenging because we have to count on the fact that they will answer the phone and talk to somebody that they don't know. But it is something that I hope to be part of to see how we can capture it.
Great. Thank you very much. And is there any other questions from the board members?
Thank you all very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Thank you.
The second part of our superintendent's report is a testing update, quarantine and excluded students.
So much of this was captured in the updates that we provided last Friday, where we're looking at both testing and the possibility of vaccination clinics in cooperation with the county. Again, the CDC did approve the vaccinations for students in the 5 to 11-year-old age range. The county has not yet, at least as of 5 o'clock this afternoon, received their vaccinations, but they are suggesting that that is imminent. So as soon as we have information there, we will collaborate with them on providing clinics for that. We've had a number of requests from parents who are asking when and where that will be available. In terms of the actual testing piece of it, again, this, my goodness, this gets terribly confusing. Because we make the distinction between asymptomatic students and symptomatic students. What does the testing look like now? If you're symptomatic, for example, the nurse sends you home. By state rule, you have to have a PCR test that clears you to be able to come back, and you have to be symptom-free when you do that. Moving forward, you've seen a lot of information within an initiative that the county has, and it's the test to stay piece of it. If you are symptomatic and you can test out of that, we can get you back into school much more quickly. That piece of it, again, pilot form. We'll see what happens at South Glens Falls, who is running the pilot. What we will learn from that and be able to implement is probably going to look different in my conversation with the county health commissioner than what the pilot does. For example, we may not have to test these students every day. It may be every other day, it may be every third day, but there are challenges with that. Our nurses right now, we are not fully staffed with our nurses. Their day-to-day operational duties are significant. They are having a very difficult time keeping up because, like with special education, there's a tremendous amount of paperwork that goes with being a school nurse. It is not, in fact, Band-Aids and cough drops. Their jobs are much more sophisticated than that. So now if we're thinking about adding testing into their duties, if we're thinking about utilizing them for vaccination clinics, there's simply not enough time in the day to be able to do that. So in looking at some adaptations that we can make in our federal funding, we actually posted yesterday or today for an LPN for each of our buildings. This would be their duty. So the registered nurse can do the day-to-day, manage the children, work with the families, et cetera. Again, knowing who has to go home under the state protocol. We can treat separately those children who have to be under the test to stay pilot. They have to be tested before school starts. That's the rule. And there's just no way we could participate in that without the additional staffing. So we have posted for those. In addition, we cannot, for example, if tomorrow the county health commissioner said, you know what, we've actually seen 3 days of the pilot test in South Glens Falls. We're so confident, all districts, you're free to go. We can't do it yet because you have to have a special license from the Department of Health for each of your sites. All 6 of our buildings have to have a special license for this. Last night we received the license for Malta Avenue. We anticipate next week we'll have the licenses for the other schools. So we need staffing, we need the license, we need the actual tests themselves. We got a note last week that said not only are the tests going to be delayed, you're not going to get the amount that you actually ordered. So we make plans, we break plans, we remake plans, and we try to keep going. So again, that covers where we are up to date right now. In our next update to parents, we'll give new information on this. As soon as a vaccination clinic is available, we'll get that publicized. Again, whether we do it on campus, you know, we're in a unique position with the county health department about 2 miles away from us. Sometimes it's just easier to direct parents there instead of to on campus, but these are things that we're working on.
And the testing you reference are the cheek swab tests?
So the antigen test, the test to stay program, that would be based on the rapid test, right? These are the ones where you're actually inside the nostril. Mm-hmm. The good news is it's a little bit modified from what many of us first experienced, where it's the deep nasal penetration that is so terribly uncomfortable. This is literally just the inside. You 5 rounds on one, 5 rounds on the other, and then you put it in the test holder. 15 minutes later, you get the result.
And if a student is deemed to be needing of these tests, there would be parental permission.
That's correct.
And the parent or caregiver would have the option to either partake in that or not
Say no,
partake in that.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Next up is committee reports.
Yes, tonight I'll be providing the report for the Audit and Finance Committee. We had met earlier this evening before tonight's board meeting. We were given our committee charter and purchasing policy so we could review and offer any feedback at future meetings. We moved on to discuss our internal audit. Now, Mr. Siriani, he explained our different levels of audit. For example, we had an external audit about a month ago where we received our external audit. There was a presentation as well. Brian introduced us to Joseph Hero. He is our internal auditor from the Bonadil Group. Did I say that correct? Yeah. Okay. In our internal audit, there were 2 items brought up as areas of concern. One of those items was yearbook sales. Another was a class of 2021 fundraising activity. These were brought up in the audit, and these will be addressed at a future meeting of the audit committee with a corrective action plan. Another area of concern brought up with us with regards to IT, more specifically with regards to phishing scams. Now, without going into much detail, because a lot of it deals with confidential information, a test was performed and areas of weaknesses were discovered. These weaknesses were brought up in the audit, and they will be addressed by our board-appointed data safety officer, who also so happens to be Mr. Sirianni. And this concluded our meeting of the Audit and Finance Committee.
Wayne, anything to add?
I think you got everything.
Okay.
And did it come up, it's my understanding from years past, that areas of concern related to clubs and activities and fundraisers is pretty common out
Yes.
there? Was that
Yeah.
communicated as well at this time?
That was communicated as well. We do have policies that address these issues. It's just a matter of them actually being followed through.
Right, and I think in years past, it's actually been somewhat of a positive thing for us that we've had so little occurrences within that area.
Yes.
Because often the auditors find a whole
Yeah.
laundry list of,
We
a
often
whole
get-
laundry list of challenges in clubs and fundraisers.
Yeah, we from my understanding, this is my first year on the board, but we do often get great reviews from our auditors, so
Okay,
great to hear.
thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Next on our agenda is correspondence. Superintendent, correspondence to the district.
Limited. Much of it recently has been in regards to the shortage of drivers and how we have been managing that plan. For tomorrow, I haven't checked the correspondence or the mail into the district tonight. We did switch the buses that are impacted tomorrow, so all of the burden isn't being borne by students and parents from buses 311 and 379. Tomorrow will be buses 346, 350, and 367. 367 has an asterisk over it, but this has been the preponderance of the correspondence.
And in terms of correspondence to the board, we did receive an inquiry regarding two specific vendors and whether we had any interactions or contracts with those vendors. One of the vendors is a vendor called Second Step, and that vendor we use some forms and materials, but not curriculum items. And the other one is a vendor known as Panorama, and we have no interaction or use of any of their materials. Other correspondence the board received were informational emails regarding various aspects of COVID-19. Do we have any announcements? Mr. Williams.
Yes, we do. Thank you. The high school will have their financial aid workshop tomorrow night here in the library. They have the staff from HVCC's financial aid office come in and work with families. So if you're interested in that, it's tomorrow night here at 6:30. On Saturday, the middle school hosts the annual Scotty's Closet, where they offer free clothing and related items to the public. It's usually a big event. They will have this year's actual assigned times when people come in. They'll be assigned a time to go into the cafeteria to shop for the free clothing. Next week, we have our emergency release day on Wednesday, November 10th. We let the schools out 15 minutes early. This is a part of that safety plan that you have in front of you that we have to practice once a year, having a dismissal such as that. And the following day on Thursday is Veterans Day, which we will take off and observe the Veterans Day. Coming up in December on the 8th, we'll have the annual Malta Food Festival. It's one of the traditional events that we've had, and it's held out at TechSmart. The Saratoga County Chamber puts it on. They organize the restaurants and the donations for that, but it raises funding for our Ballston Spa Partnership for Innovation in Education Fund. So you'll see more details for that coming out as we approach December 8th. And finally, as you've heard, the district does have opportunities for employment for several different positions, including the bus drivers, the LPNs you heard reference to earlier, teaching assistants and aides. We have dire needs for some of those. So anything you can do to get the word out and let people know that we do have jobs available here in the district, we would appreciate it. All the details are on the website. And that is it.
Any other announcements from any board members?
Just a reminder that the Ballston Spa Education Foundation online auction starts next week, and you can go to their social media Facebook page to sign up and see what they have and shop early.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, and I would also like to just give a job well done to the senior class this past Monday. They had to pivot from an annual fundraiser known as the Mr. Ballstonian contest. They found that they had to change to having what was known as the Scotty's Feud, a family feud type event that was a fundraiser again for the senior class, and they put the whole thing together in about a week, and it occurred in our auditorium on Monday. The board had the great pleasure to join as a team, and we did okay. There were some good moments and some bad moments, including bad moments for myself there, but we did our best, and it was a great event, and it was a great job well done by our senior class. So just wanted to mention that. Do we have old business?
No, sir.
All right, on to new business. Brian, I just want to check we have nothing that requires a roll call vote, right? Thank you. All right. First up, resolution number 256, field trip, 8th grade. May I have a motion to approve resolution number 256, field trip, 8th grade?
So moved.
Any comment? Not hearing any. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution 256 passes. May I have a motion to approve resolution number 257, agreement, professional services?
So moved.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 257 passes. I have a motion to approve resolution number 258, establish award.
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I'd like to thank those who are establishing this scholarship award. It's much appreciated. Resolution 258 passes. May I have a motion to approve resolution number 259, resignation, Board of Education?
Reluctantly, but so moved.
Is there any discussion?
Certainly on behalf of the administration, this is mixed for us. We are sorry to see Melissa go from the board, but we are thrilled that she will be moving down the hall from us to her new duties, which we'll talk about in a subsequent resolution. But thank you, Melissa, for your willingness to serve on the board.
Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions?
Abstain.
Note Melissa Glastetter abstains. And I would just take one moment here to say that, Melissa, we have a token of our appreciation for your service to our district and to the board. Thank you very much for your service to all the members of our school district. We thank you for all your contributions to our school board, and I think it's great that you're joining the district in a different role, but we will certainly miss you on the board. And we have a card and a small token of our appreciation here. So I'd like to present that to you. Melissa's in her 3rd year with us, so she served us very well for 2+ years. Thank you very much. Resolution number 259, resignation, Board of Education passes. We have a motion to approve resolution number 260, placement of students with disabilities.
So moved.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 260 passes. We have a motion to approve resolution number 261, placement of preschool students with disabilities.
So moved.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 261 passes. Resolutions number 262, 277 are recognized as a consent agenda for the purpose of Board of Education action. Superintendent, in here we have several appointments. Are any of those people present
I
here?
don't believe so, no, not this evening.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to approve resolutions number 262 through 267 as a consent agenda?
So moved.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I abstain.
Note, Ms. Glassstetter abstains. Resolutions 262 to 277, the consent agenda, pass. That is the end of our resolutions. Next up in new business, we have a policy number 1230 review. This is the policy on the replacement of resigning board members, and it's a informational item for our members here.
Anytime, and some of you that were on the board will recall, when Chris resigned, gosh, it's been a year and a half ago, I believe, we had to go through this process as well. Policy 1230 is fairly straightforward. There are really two choices, a third if the board chooses not to act. The first is that the board can choose to appoint a member. How you go about appointing, generating individuals that you would consider, that's a separate conversation. The second option is that you can hold a special election for this. The special election, typically that's something that's reserved for earlier in the year, because by the time we establish that that's what the board would do, go through the timelines, all of the postings, et cetera, we're probably January, February, March. And then you have 2 months till the expiration of that term. If the board chooses to do nothing, the district superintendent, on behalf of the commissioner, could step in and require you to hold a special election. Rare, but occasionally it's happened when a board has decided not to act in that fashion. So the last time this happened, because we were approaching budget season, very, very much like we are now, the board then decided that a previous member who had experience with the budgeting process that was not intending to run for a subsequent seat made good sense. And so that's where Mrs. McCarthy was brought back. But again, there's lots of options for the board to consider under that pathway. Brian, would you add anything to that? No, that sounds right. Okay.
Right, and traditionally, and it's my intention this year, I will help facilitate the board through this process. And if there's any questions along the way, please reach out. And are there any questions on anything that was just shared regarding policy number 1230? Okay. Do we have any other new business?
No, sir.
That brings us to the time in our meeting, second time for public comment. And do we have public comment? Thank you. I will not read the guidance related to public comment, but same thing applies as I read the first time. And again, in terms of the 2-minute limit, I certainly will try and work with you and give you the opportunity to have your comment. Please try and be respectful of everyone's time. And first person signed up for public comment is Jason Gertler.
Good evening, everybody. Melissa,
evening.
congratulations. Thank you for your service. You're going to do very well.
Thank you.
I have 2 questions for the board tonight. It was mentioned about testing and using PCR tests. The PCR tests, according to the CDC, are being discontinued after the 31st of December. And they are recommending, they have a list of recommended tests that are available. Just wondering if you are aware and what tests that you will be providing. And along with that testing, are you only testing unvaccinated? We know that breakthrough cases are on the rise. Cases of hospitalizations, infections, sicknesses, they're breakthrough cases in vaccinated people. So I think only fair that you test everybody. There's no discrimination here. A vaccinated person can give it to an unvaccinated person, just the same and the other way around. So you should consider should consider testing both vaccinated and unvaccinated. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitler. And we have a second speaker, Mr. Dubuque.
I just have 2 questions that came up as I was listening to some of the presentations. Well, again, this would probably be where a dialogue would be good to have that set up. I'm trying to keep this in my mind to talk about now. With the things that were mentioned with MTSS being data-driven, the 504 plan, I also heard mentioned other health impaired. I've been through quite a bit, both in my job with Office of Children and Family Services, working in a mental health unit in a juvenile detention facility. Not a fun experience, but again, you have to have a special heart to work in that field. So again, I have to give credit to anybody who works within special education and works with any children who have social, behavioral, and emotional needs. It can be very difficult. So I guess one of my questions, as far as the data-driven process, I would ask, is there any data being collected on the impact of the masks on the mental, social, and behavioral health of the people within our care within the school system? Again, I love this school district. It's one of the reasons why I have such a high mortgage now, because I chose to stay close to a school district that has treated my children fairly, both with IEPs and 504 planning. It's just been a wonderful experience. However, again, I have had other districts report to me, parents and teachers, of kids going so far as with broken arms, not even going to the nurse with a broken arm because they're afraid they might get tested for COVID. We even had a young lady that unfortunately vomited in her mask and went through the entire day without going to the nurse because she was afraid of being tested for COVID. These are pretty well adapted children, no IEPs, no 504 plans, so I sort of get a little concerned when they're going to such great lengths not to go to the nurse for something that typically I couldn't imagine going through an entire day with a broken appendage and being that afraid to report to the nurse because I may be tested for COVID. So, or sent home due to the suspicion of having COVID. So again, that would be my question is there data being driven on the impact that this is having on all kids, but especially kids that have IEPs and 504 plans? Some of you, whether you know this or not, when you have a child with OHI. The one thing is there is no set diagnosis. They really don't know. You can go to numerous psychologists, psychiatrists, and they don't know. Are they on the spectrum? Are they on the spectrum for autism? Are they on the spectrum for bipolar? What's that look like? Are they more OCD inclined? Do you have a possibility that they could be schizophrenic? Usually that's something that can't be determined until they reach a certain maturity or a certain age. It's very difficult. And sometimes they will perform perfectly well in school. They'll hold it together all day long until they get home, and then it just explodes. So now imagine adding that additional environmental impact of having to wear a mask all day long. Especially I hear the testing coming for test to stay. It's a mixed bag for me. I would rather kids stay in school, stay in the classroom, and if there's a test to stay option, that's better than the alternative of having to be sent home for a specific period of time. So I'm sort of piggybacking on that as well with what Jason brought up. Part of the shortage of the rapid tests is because the state, not just with schools, but with our various state agencies, is requiring all unvaccinated staff to test. So of course, that's going to require a lot of tests. There's a lot of unvaccinated state workers and teachers. One, it is a bit discriminatory because there's a lot of us who cannot get the vaccination either for health reasons or for deeply held religious beliefs or convictions. So again, by only testing us and not testing everyone, we're being discriminated against right then and there. Some agencies are addressing it. OPWDD is testing both vaccinated and unvaccinated. Vaccinated staff usually get tested every 2 weeks, where unvaccinated staff get tested weekly. A little bit fairer of a system, but that's a significant number of tests that are going out, and then the continually getting tested each week. I think it'd be a little bit fairer to have a system in place where it's only 2 weeks. There'd be more tests available. Then we'd have more tests available for kids so they could be tested and stay in school. So that'd be a question I would ask. I would ask the Department of Health that. I would probably ask the state that as well, if in fact the test shortage is a result of these mandates for agencies and schools to have to test everyone who is unvaccinated. The other question, sort of just building off of what was discussed earlier for the district-wide safety plan. It was brought up that, obviously one of the concerns we have is how do we address a behavioral issue with a child who may be having a particularly rough day and they have social, emotional, and behavioral health. Again, having worked in a juvenile detention facility, I've seen the far end of where that can lead to. I know it's difficult. So one thing we always looked at is what impacted the kids' behavior that they got to that point. Masking all day and certain other things that are already impacting our kids' mental health is just going to create problems down the road, whether it's for 2022, 2023. So again, I'd probably be asking those questions of, are we looking at more behavioral issues in the school that we already have a tough time addressing with a lack of staff and with a lack of even people to drive the bus, nonetheless monitors to be on the bus to assist, which is a common location for behavioral issues to occur. Again, that might be a question to ask, is the impact, the emotional, mental, and behavioral impact these masks are having on our kids by having to wear them all day long. So again, just some food for thought, just something I'd bring up to the board to maybe be some pointed questions to ask. That's pretty much it. And again, we're here to help you. If you have any questions, concerns, you have my email, both of them. So feel free to reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to present any ideas or suggestions that we can provide as an organization to you. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. Next up on our agenda is presentations by our associations. Do we have anyone here from our associations tonight?
We do not.
Anything from PTA? No. Okay. That brings us to our adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh,
And a second? From Wayne, Mr. Evans? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for those who tuned in.